Hello, everyone. I'm Marc, one of the founders of Langfuse, and welcome you to our town hall. Today, we'll cover our latest releases from the first quarter of this year, and then the roadmap and the updated roadmap for Q2 with short recap also of our general core initiatives that we'll drive over the course of this year. I'm excited to see you all. As a reminder, this session is recorded and we'll upload it to YouTube probably later today or tomorrow. We'll extensively use the Q&A tooling by Google Meet at the end of this meeting. So if you have any questions that come up already during the first half of the session, which will mostly me speaking and showing what's new and what's coming, you can already log questions via the Q&A menu on the bottom right. It's these kind of multiple dots, and then you should see Q&A to log questions to the backlog. You can also upvote on other questions, which we can then get to at the end. As this session is recorded, as long as you don't turn on your video or unmute yourself, you won't be part of the video feed. If you speak up during the Q&A, which would be really cool, just a reminder, you'll be part of the video in the end as well. So let's get started. Maybe as a quick agenda for the session, first there will be some introductory remarks by me, then some kind of recap of growth in recent month, a recap of the largest releases of Q1. I mean, recap I think is underselling. I quickly prepared it before the session. I'll try to demo everything we've built in Q1 or everything that's kind of cool from my perspective. Then I'll do a short outline on the evolution of Langfuse over the recent months and quarters, and also some focus areas for this quarter, but also generally for the project. So based on all of your feedback. Then I'll dive deeper on the Q2 roadmap, and then we have lots and lots of time for Q&A, feedback, wish list, whatever is interesting to you to drive the conversation. Please use the Q&A tooling by Google Meet already right now if anything comes up. So first of all, the best way to participate in Langfuse is via GitHub, langfuse.com/ideas or /support if you want support directly by the maintainers, or if you want to raise some additional roadmap items. Many of you use this extensively already. Just want to encourage you, this is the best way to influence the project into the right direction and discuss new capabilities and ideas before contributing or before one of the commentators picks up a topic. So thanks so much for engaging on GitHub discussions already. And I just want to encourage, engage more. I'm really looking forward to chat with you there. The Discord server is Git as a community Discord. We'll hang around, but all maintainers are very, very active on GitHub. Generally, just brief introduction again. We are an open source project, but also there's a team behind this that's very excited to work with some of the best companies like Samsara, Circleback, Khan Academy, Twilio, and I should have updated this slide. We are now at 10,000 stars since last week, which we are really excited about. And also we increased our SDK installs to over 5 million per month and Docker pulls. So basically this chart continues to grow a lot, and we're very excited about it, about all the partnerships, all the exciting teams that onboard onto Langfuse on a monthly basis. So the growth of the project did not stop over recent months. This is a picture of the team behind it, where there's me mostly focusing on documentation, chatting with you all, steering the project into the right direction product-wise. Max to the right of me focused on the backend infrastructure technology, one of my co-founders and CTO. Hasib, who probably many of you know from discussions on GitHub on all the integrations that we maintain, as he led many of them and currently works on a big new improvement to these. Yannick, who leads a lot of growth documentation and integration documentation. So if there's something where you feel documentation could be better, please contribute some ideas or issues to our repository. And he is very excited to learn more about these ideas. Clemens, my second co-founder, who focuses on everything commercial and helps, especially if your organizations are larger, helps you deploy Langfuse, find the right working mode together with us maintainers and the core team. And yeah, generally, he'll be the one if you reach out to, for example, enterprise at Langfuse to work really closely with us on your company priorities. Marlies, we will see many improvements to the UI by her in a bit. And Steffen, who has launched something massive today, which I'll show at all the way at the end. Probably many of you know him from the version 3 blog post, as he led many of the changes that went into Langfuse version 3 and all of the improved scalability. If you are generally interested about the space and happen to live in Europe or wanting to move to Berlin, we are very actively hiring, just as an FYI. So if whatever we ship sounds interesting to you to work on, let me know and just reach out. Basically, you can reach any of us via like first name via the names in this picture. So this is the fun part. I'll try to demo all the major releases that we released in Q1. Currently, it's 09. I'll try to get it done in 10 minutes. So this is everything, like basically all the major changes of Q1. So let's get started. First of all is the trace UI, where we have an all-new trace view. Like many of you will have noticed, for example, this trace tree has shifted from the right side to the left side. A lot of the like UI and markup is changed. Like, for example, if you like deep link to something, reload the page, it auto scrolls to the right point. If you use an agent framework such as LangGraph, we render now a graph representation of this as well. You can like hide some observations. So if you have debug observations, they are hidden by default, but you can also change this and change the level that's shown. And generally also the timeline is basically way more unified in how it's presented, where beforehand, basically the timeline was very standalone, and now it's basically just another alternative viewing option for this trace tree. There's way more to it. If you have any feedback regarding this new core trace UI, where I feel like when we map minutes of time spent in app, a lot of minutes in app are spent on the screen. So if you have any kinds of questions or feedback, please let us know. There's one additional thing that's related, where Marlies recently shipped that you can open trace previews directly from the trace table, which make working with traces and exploring them interactively way easier. You can navigate with keyboard shortcuts, open the preview, continue to navigate here with shortcuts. So yeah, if there's anything you feel like could be better about the core trace experience, let us know. This is the most important UI that we have in the product. Then additionally, many of you have asked for how to actually manage different environments well in Langfuse. Until now, the recommendation was to use tags or like metadata fields to segment them, or some of you have like fallen back to using separate projects. That was led us to adding native metadata support in Langfuse, where you can, when you set up an integration, set up an environment. This is supported across different integrations. And then when we go back to the UI, basically you can see a new environment field here, which will then allow you to select by this new environment, which should hopefully clean up a lot of the work in Langfuse, where previously, if you, for example, used prompts and used tracing in different environments, one to separate environments, and maybe have chosen to use different projects, it was all a little bit messy, because then prompts lived in one project and traces in another. Now with native environments, this should be way easier. In Q1, one of the major releases was on the integration side, starting with our new OpenTelemetry endpoint, which dramatically increases compatibility with all sorts of frameworks and technology stacks. You can use the OpenTelemetry endpoint, for example, via like Go or Java or whatever basically tech stack you have via the OpenTelemetry SDKs. We are very excited about this, because generally the semantic conventions of OpenTelemetry continue to develop nicely, meaning if you pick up a new framework and it comes with some kind of OTel instrumentation, then you can be kind of sure that the traces look kind of nice in Langfuse, and then you can still file an issue with us to improve a bit for the rough edges that might exist if something that the SDK does is outside of the specification. But yeah, very excited about OpenTelemetry as it dramatically increases general compatibility of Langfuse. And also, this endpoint is then used for some of our latest documented integrations, where, for example, the OpenAI agent SDK that was released can be natively traced using some vendor-specific instrumentations. For example, here we reused the Pydantic AI instrumentation for the OpenAI agents, where it's really, really nice that it emits OTel semantic convention traces, and Langfuse just consumes them and renders them. Thereby, compatibility is really, really increased. And when we go to our landing page with an overview of the different integrations, we can see OpenTelemetry, but for example, Crew AI happens via OpenTelemetry already, DSPy, small agents, Amazon Bedrock agents, which is about to release as an integration probably next week. We're working with their team, AutoGen, Pydantic AI. Yeah, I'm very excited about it because it's like standardized a lot of the implementation overhead. Regarding this, I think the only little new thing here is as well that Langfuse has now a Java client as well. So if you use OpenTelemetry for instrumentation of your Java application, you can now also use the Langfuse Java SDK to then use all of the other API capabilities, as for example, prompt management. And there's, for example, an example also for Spring AI. Cool. Let's jump to the next one. Prompt management, which has grown into one of the main product features next to overall application tracing. Also here, Marlies rolled out a fully new UI with lots of new capabilities. For example, it's way easier now to use a prompt by just copying code snippets for the specific prompt, which already includes the label and name, which makes integrating prompt management that much easier. You can now compose prompts. So if you always use, for example, guidelines in a prompt, which is like a snippet that we commonly use, you can add a prompt reference, select another prompt that you want to inline into the prompt, then, for example, select a label. So we can select the prompt production of the guidelines prompt, and then we can insert it. When we then save a new prompt version, we'll see that this other prompt is referenced within this current prompt. We can click Resolved Prompt and see a preview of the inlined dependencies. And this is all propagated across all caching layers of Langfuse Prompt Management, which make Langfuse Prompt Management really production grade. But yeah, this should encourage a lot of reuse across your prompts that you store within Langfuse. Then next, we released a feature that was requested by many larger teams around protected prompt labels, where I'll just pull up the page, protected prompt labels. Basically, you can now, within the Langfuse project settings, configure which prompt label shall be protected, because previously, if you work in a larger team, it might have been the case that any user that is allowed to edit prompts can also promote them to production. And if you want to, for example, protect production or staging environments, you can now add this protection to some labels. Next, we added a new code editor, which links the different variables. So if you, for example, start a variable with a number which is not allowed, you will directly get some hints, which makes working with prompt management way easier. Next, if you do lots of changes to prompts, you can now add a commit message of, let's say, test, save new prompt version, and we then directly within the list of different prompt versions can see the commit message, which makes tracking changes easier. Finally, regarding prompt management, we released a Model Context Protocol server for Langfuse prompts. Some of you have been extremely excited about MCP, especially when applications become more agentic and should basically pull prompts as resources whenever they feel like the prompt is the right one to pull to then solve our problem. So if you want to basically turn agents to be less prescriptive and more dynamic and reason with themselves and then pull prompts more as like standard operating procedures or like guidelines, you can use this MCP server for Langfuse prompts. If you have feedback on this, please raise an issue on the GitHub repository of this MCP server. Coming to the next product section in the playground, one of the most requested features was adding support for tool calls and structured output also in the Langfuse playground. I've added an example here where when we add a tool, we can add the tool definition. And now I have the standard get weather. What's the weather in Arizona? If we hit enter, we can see that we have a get weather call. We can directly add it to the message, enter the tool response of great weather, 100 degrees, hit submit again, and get the final response that would be returned to the user of the weather in Arizona is currently 100 degrees. Perfect. This also works for structured output. And if you come from a trace, we try to pass the different libraries, LM traces to them, directly pass them into tools and structured output here. Next, regarding self-hosting, we have a couple of exciting changes. basically with Langfuse v3, we added a couple of new infrastructure components as discussed in the last town hall and in our version 3 blog post. Over the last month, we released the version 1 of the Helm chart, meaning it now follows semantic versioning. We don't break things in like minor releases, and it includes a lot of the like scalability and like dynamic policies that we also apply to Langfuse Cloud. So if you're looking for a very scalable self-hosted deployment of Langfuse, this Helm chart is the recommended way to get started. A very common request was to take this Helm chart and make it like hyperscaler specific. So for example, the GitHub discussion thread that tracks the like interest in an AWS deployment stack for Langfuse v3, like 76 upvotes, lots of people that were excited. There is already an AWS sample to deploy Langfuse on Fargate. Also for version 3, AWS updated it. But we, as the core maintainers, now also published our Terraform repository for AWS, just to make sure that it also then follows semantic versioning, that it's really like one of the recommended ways to use Langfuse when self-hosting. So you can now also use this Terraform repository for AWS. And we'll publish additional ones for Azure and GCP soon as well. So they are work in progress. Then some little things in the UI. If you or someone from your team or whoever you recommend Langfuse gets started with it, probably you remember in the past, like you were dropped into empty tables across the product. This quarter, we added more onboarding screens across the product, which make it way easier to discover the different features, understand what they do, how to use them, links to documentation. So yeah, we are very happy about this very simple change, but something that really helps people to understand how Langfuse works. Then also, if you're a power user, now it's way easier to switch between the different features of, I don't know, audit log, dashboard. So way easier to navigate via Command K as well. Then Element as a judge changed quite a bit, where, I mean, it's just like a small checkbox, but now you can also run Element as a judge evals on historical data within Langfuse, which is quite helpful if you want to benchmark a couple of evals, or if you see a new regression production via like user feedback and now want to test whether this is like a common problem. So you can now just hit the checkbox, and the evaluator is not only run on new traces, but also on existing traces that match the filter that you can add here when creating a new evaluator. Also, if you want to be more specific about what's inserted into the evaluation prompt, you can now use basically a JSON path that specifies, for example, from the trace input, that you always want to use the like second to last message from the array, which might be interesting if you want to be very specific about what's going on. Then when using Langfuse datasets in the past, I mean, there you have like complete programmatic access to Langfuse datasets and can use them for evaluations and prompt experiments, but you needed to create them via the API. This was a problem, especially if when onboarding more people and you just want to do like a quick test on a new prompt version. So what we now added was that you can just upload them as like a CSV file as well. So here I'll just create, upload like an example CSV from my machine. And now you can map different columns from the CSV file to the input, expect, output metadata columns. So let's, for example, take, we have an input of first name and last name, and we expect the output of email. And let's just put everything else into metadata. We then import the CSV file. Basically, we can see that every item has these inputs mapped to the input, expect, output metadata columns, which now, for example, when trying to guess the email via a prompt based on the last name and first name variables, now we already have like a testing data set to try whether this works. Maybe this is a bit too simple, but I have no idea why here we have the Smith and everywhere else just like the last name initial. Perfect. Then running it out, the API has gotten some changes. So first, we have an all new API reference, which makes it way easier to also then test the requests right within the API reference, which might be helpful if you want to build like custom integrations. And a couple of product features that hadn't had an API before got APIs. So for example, annotation queues, and let me see, like the score config. So a couple of new APIs were released this quarter, but mostly annotation queues to then dynamically like specify what should be routed into an annotation queue. Then, I mean, in the past, we had these type functions for tracing and prompt management in the SDKs. But sometimes when wanting to build like a custom workflow, you really need to use the API, which wasn't typed. You need to basically request it yourself via your technology stack. And we now added type clients for all SDK, for all API endpoints for Python, JavaScript, and Java. So basically, for example, in Python, on Langfuse, when you instantiate it on API or async API, you get a client that's like a typed wrapper of the API that returns Pydantic objects that map to the API return type. And same applies to JavaScript, TypeScript, and Java. Like these are fully typed. Shout out to our friends at Fern for providing like a very nice generator for these API SDKs. Then, in addition, we added a couple of security features because they are very much requested around data deletion, especially if you follow like GDPR or some like traces, just you don't need them anymore. Like with the change to Langfuse version 3 and basically OLAP data store, deleting data at scale became a bit problematic. So this was like a larger project, but now you can delete single traces in the UI. You can delete single traces via the API. You can delete batches of traces. So if you have a table and just select traces, you can select them. Same also, we have batch trace deletion API, so you can pass an array of IDs. And if you want to, for example, also if you want to delete all traces by a specific user, you can filter the table by user, select all pages. So for example, here, like 800 items, and then delete them in bulk if you want to remove some data from Langfuse. Maybe as a heads up, this will delete all trace information to be very compliant here. But this is async, so it takes 10 to 15 minutes to propagate across all systems. Then some additional security features where, one, you can now specify a data retention on a project level. So if you, for example, want Langfuse to auto-delete all data after 30 days, you can enter 30 days and hit save, and then Langfuse will just, on a schedule, delete data. And if you need audit logs, you can now get them in the project settings as well. And yeah, that's basically high level, the main things that we've launched. I'm extremely excited. I mean, when working on this, sometimes you don't really track all of these changes. So now when creating this slide, I was kind of excited to see how much we've shipped. And I'm even more excited to now dive deeper into like the Q2 roadmap. Let me, like, if you have questions regarding any of these changes, put them in the Q&A and we can get to them during the Q&A section of this call. So evolution of Langfuse, just as a recap, I showed the same slide last town hall. I think it's really good. We started with tracing. We added online evals. We added prompt management. We added offline eval capabilities, prompt experiments to directly iterate on prompts in the UI, and then increased scalability a lot towards the end of last year. And since then, I mean, this is basically what you need to drive the workflow that you want in LM Ops. And now we increase a lot of depth across all of these features and UI and workflows and APIs. And basically what Langfuse is trying to solve is this kind of workflow. I think many of you run similar workflows. I just want to go through it where basically we can store test data sets within Langfuse with like happy paths, edge cases, adversarial inputs that you want to test for while iterating on your application locally or in CI, then making rapid changes and trying whether they improve things or not on top of these kinds of like test data sets, having like instant evaluation results, for example, via Elements, Dodge, and Langfuse, or via code-based evals that you can run within our SDK runners. So you can see when making changes whether they actually improve things and not cause regressions. Then when deploying, you can add guardrails to your application where we have some documentation on how to use different open source guardrail libraries and then monitor whether they actually work. Then you can use like Langfuse production tracing to capture real data of what users actually do. Because like a very common problem is then when monitoring this production data, like teams will realize that based on user feedback or automated evals or manual review of just sampling 1,000 examples every week and manually annotating them, that we have new test cases of basically things that we didn't expect to happen in our data sets, so we can add them to test data sets. Or if we see problems happening here while debugging, we can fix an issue and then try whether we don't cause any regressions on the test data of things that we actually want to perform well on. So this is, I think, overall to keep in mind. And you'll find this also like within our roadmap a lot, that we like build features to really close this loop and make it as easy as possible in UI and via the SDKs to execute on this. High-level roadmap hasn't changed because we did like a huge survey of the whole community at the beginning of this year. Thanks again for everyone who responded to our email of what shall we build, fix, or improve about Langfuse. And based on this, we have a couple of key focus areas. So we'll dive deep on everything related to agents, meaning more complex applications, how to actually make them useful on a single level, but also on an aggregate level if you have like hundreds of thousands of executions. OpenTelemetry causes huge changes within the platform to, on the one hand, increase compatibility via the new OpenTelemetry endpoint, but also, I'll get to it, we're currently investigating basically shifting all of the Langfuse SDKs under the hood to an OpenTelemetry transport. This doesn't change anything if you use the OpenTelemetry, the Langfuse SDKs today. Like the user experience is the same, but under the hood we'll use OpenTelemetry, which is nice if you want to switch things around or send the data also to Datadog or another like OpenTelemetry backend. Then on evals, we will double down on all sorts of workflows related to evals and making sure that evals actually capture what they should capture, so analytics around evals. Prompt management has grown to one of the most important features within the platform. So, I just demoed lots of new capabilities within prompt management, and this will continue throughout this year to really make iterating on prompts and UI with cross-functional teams as easy as possible. Metrics, Langfuse captures lots of different data points and basically aggregating them in flexible ways to maybe like impact rate limits or deduce the right insights from production data is really important for us. And we'll continue to release new features in this regard. And then I put it under like administration. It's kind of like if you run a platform and have hundreds of teams using Langfuse, then we'll add more and more capabilities that make you more compliant, where Langfuse is then easier to use, to sync with other internal tools, sync with MLOps tools, your inference layers, gateways. So basically administration, how it fits into like an architecture that already exists. So lots of changes planned in this regard as well. So basically, just as like a highlight, this is like our quick roadmap process among the core maintainers, where we take all of the GitHub discussion posts that we have, all of the individual conversations that we have to get to a good prioritization. And I'm super happy to now share with you what the key roadmap items are for the next quarter. So let's go to langfuse.com/roadmap. If you want to have an own read, this is public since like an hour ago. So yeah, we really appreciate any feedback on this, where roadmap-wise in progress currently are more tracing features around. We have an initial demo of full text search. We expect to release this very soon. This is, I think, one of the core. This is one of the most requested features as well. So we are very excited to make it happen. And yeah, we'll update you on this thread, and probably you'll just see it directly in the UI once it's released, because the search bar can now do way more things of actually searching for like substrings within traces. Then analytics, like customizable dashboards to create your own views on top of the data in Langfuse, and a query API. So if you, for example, want to like display some charts within your application, or query data as like what are the most expensive users to then, rate limit them. I have no idea. Whatever you want, basically, aggregate metrics and get them via API. So this will come very soon. We have like a beta version already. And then we are currently working on making the Langfuse SDKs OpenTelemetry native, as the Langfuse server already supports OpenTelemetry, and we just want to follow the standard here. Regarding evaluation, we're currently working on session-level evals, improvements to the core eval views, and to be able to annotate dataset experiments more easily. So if you run an experiment, have 3 different versions that you directly in UI can select which kind of result you like better to then get to a solution of what's the better experiment without needing to have automated evals that work really well. Then we continue to push on UI UX. We currently have a draft of an admin skim API, which is also a very highly requested features by many of you in the community, to be able to then provision and manage organizations and projects. We dragged our feet a little bit on this, because we wanted to make sure that our resource model and how organizations, projects, and users work is really stable, because we know once we expose it as like an admin API, this admin API needs to be really stable. We're very excited that we got to this point, and yeah, follow the thread if you want updates on this. And our self-hosting documentation will become much easier. We have some notes on this already, and plan a re-release of the getting started for self-hosting next week, to give you better guidance on the right deployment options and how to scale Langfuse if you hit millions or billions of events where the minimum deployment might not be enough. This is basically what's in progress already. And we have some big plans for this quarter. Overall, agents, as mentioned, are one of the core roadmap topics where we already have an agent graph. We will generalize it to make it available across all the different agent frameworks. And if you build something yourself, then we build more visualization options around tool calls, tool discovery, whether basically tool signatures are used correctly, all of the things that are specific to agents that should use lots of tools and use them correctly. We want to build more opinionated agent evaluations. We have a blog post out already on how to think about this, and basically we'll transfer many of these learnings that we got from talking with some of you to then like more opinionated product features around this. Evaluation will get like a huge upgrade during this quarter of a more simplified UI. The current UI is great, is complex, and we want to simplify it to make it easy to get started in the UI. More elements judge templates, basically allow for running non-LLM evaluators, so classifiers, custom code, regex. Try to be more flexible around evals. To be able to run evals on repeated spans within a trace. So if you have, for example, an agent that does 20 like SQL generations, it would be really cool if Langfuse could just evaluate every single one of them to make sure that like SQL generation generally works. Currently, this is not possible. There's like a quick change, but I think something that's really interesting in the context of agents. Then we want to help with more comparisons of different evaluation metrics, because finding the right eval and iterating on it is extremely important, because otherwise you have evals that you can't trust. So, for example, correlations, confusion matrices, so some basically dashboarding UI that helps you understand whether your evals actually work. We will improve the SDKs to simplify running experiments, where currently it's quite low level, the SDK, and we'll abstract it a bit to make it easier to run this, and also provide more examples on how to run Langfuse experiments as regression tests in CI/CD pipelines, because you might want either nightly or whenever making a change to an application, see that you haven't caused major regressions, and Langfuse can help with this. We want to make it easier to set this up via better examples. And we'll add tracing to the evals that are run within Langfuse for better observability, cost tracking, debugging of the evals themselves. Because if you have a huge application with lots of traffic and then you run online evals on them, this can become expensive. So tracking this again in Langfuse is interesting. Finally, not finally. Next, UI. Lots of things planned regarding the UI of the core tables, because in the end, Langfuse is tables and single trace views basically, and improving on the table UI is something we've planned for a long time, and we want to make it happen this quarter. Prompt management will get a couple of upgrades around placeholders, tracking prompt variables, and production tracing, especially if you want to close the loop from production traces back into datasets. It's really interesting to then extract the prompt labels that were used in production to automatically like replay a prompt when you change it on the variables that were inserted into the prompt in production. So I'm very excited about this. We have some drafts. This is a bit complex to get right without memory leaks. Working on this. We want to ship some LLM-assisted prompt engineering because it's kind of simple to add something like this, and a good reason for us to also dog food Langfuse internally. Folders, because some of you have like thousands of prompts, and folders will help to just like organize them better. A/B testing, many B2C companies that I've talked with like to test prompts A/B in production, because like regressions, if they're minimal, aren't that bad, and you then want to use basically only evals to see whether a new prompt version is better or worse than the previous one. So we'll add A/B testing and native support for tool calls and structured outputs also in prompt management. On the data platform side, especially if you run very customized workflows or larger scale workflows, this will be like an exciting quarter, because we'll finally get to adding webhooks, where when we look at this issue also, or this discussion thread, this is also very, very requested by many of you. So we're excited about this, because then you can subscribe to changes within your Langfuse projects, and then trigger external actions like, I don't know, if you always want to update a GitHub repository whenever a prompt changes, if you want to persist it there, or if you want to trigger some evaluation workflows whenever a new trace is ingested that has negative user feedback. Like all of these things get way easier with webhooks, or being notified of every negative user feedback in a Slack channel. Like we have these things in mind. Then in addition to this, alerts are really interesting that are then more like threshold or error level based. I'm not yet sure whether we'll make it in time, but this is something we're very excited about to add on top of the webhook. webhooks, and also adding basically webhooks, but routing them into internal platform features is interesting, where, for example, when getting negative user feedback directly, routing it to an annotation queue, and when the annotator confirms that something didn't work, then routing it to a data set for as a new edge case is very exciting. Prompt experiments and playground. So we plan to add a split view to the prompt playground and more tool and structured output support to prompt experiments as well. And some two final pieces for our managed offering of Langfuse Cloud. We're currently looking deeper into HIPAA compliance because many of you work in the medical space within the US, where then HIPAA compliance really helps to use the cloud product instead of needing to use like host Langfuse yourself if you don't want to. And if you run on Langfuse Cloud, we're looking to user-based billing alerts because, I mean, Langfuse is quite cheap if you get started, but then if maybe you scale out usage, it can hit your budget. So getting an alert before you get a bill by us is something we want to enable for you. So we're done with roadmap. This is our best effort at summarizing what many of you want. If you have any additional feedback on this or feel like this doesn't fit what is really, really important to you, then please raise an issue on GitHub or tag me on the GitHub discussion thread with this is really important and this is why. And we are happy to like rethink this roadmap or make changes to it based on your feedback. So yeah, very, very excited about the discussion on GitHub discussions. And one more thing, needed to make this joke. There is something that we actually released as a beta just right before this call. So I wanted to really show it to you live right away because configurable dashboards is one of the most requested features. And basically, it's 27, so not most requested, but I think I get like emails for new chart types that many of you want every day. And basically, we realized that it's really, really difficult to build a single opinionated dashboard that solves the problems of all of you. So Steffen today released an early beta of configurable dashboards within the Langfuse UI. For now, for this week, it's available only on Langfuse Cloud because we can then make some like more drastic changes to the like data schema still while it's in early beta. But we expect to release this very, very soon also to everyone self-hosting Langfuse. There, I mean, we don't want to constrain self-hosting. It's just we want to make sure that we don't break anything you built with self-serve dashboards. And with Langfuse Cloud, we can just make a couple of manual migrations if needed. But once we release it for self-hosting, we want it to be extremely stable, so you don't need to worry about this. So let's open this custom dashboard and create a new chart live. So this is still early. We'll fix a couple of things in the UI still, but I'm very excited about this, where we can now, for example, add a new widget. Let's create a new widget. And for example, let's take, we want, what's like a good idea? Cost by model could be interesting. So we can take observations, select the total cost, pick the sum of cost, and then, for example, as a breakdown, let's take the provided model name. We are still fixing a couple of things here with, for example, always padding zeros on the chart. So as mentioned, this is an early beta, but we have a couple of improvements planned for the next week. So we can now take model cost, so cost by model, true, and save the widget. If we go back to the dashboard, we can now open the dashboard. Also on the UI side, we have some changes planned to make this a little bit easier, where we can now add cost by model as a widget. And if we then, for example, select the last 7 days, we'll see the cost that we have by model over time. Overall, this is early, but this is one of the things that we are most excited about. What you can expect is that when you open dashboards, you'll get a couple of opinionated dashboards made by the Langfuse team around cost improvement, score analytics, and the things that we've gotten as feedback the most. And then you can create your own dashboards and share with your teams. So yeah, really wanted to demo this because this is basically like I think, one of the releases that I'm personally, and I think many of you are most excited about. Like we waited a long time for this. Awesome. Quick reminder before we start with the Q&A, we're hiring. If you or your friends are in Berlin and are excited about the space, please reach out to us. First name @ so Marc @langfuse.com, and I'd love to chat. And thanks again for all the great discussions on GitHub and Discord regarding this roadmap, all the contributions, detailed bug reports. This really makes Langfuse robust and interesting to many of you. So really, really appreciate when you take the time to share your feedback with us or contribute new features or contribute bug fixes. This very much appreciated. So now I think I needed a little bit more time than I expected, as like the demo, I didn't get it done in 10 minutes. But let's use the rest of the call for Q&A. And also, I'm happy to stay longer during this call if we want to do more Q&A. I'll try to jump back to the call. Okay, perfect. So let's open it up. Yannick, were there like any important things in the chat that we should cover first, or shall we directly go to Q&A?
No, let's directly go to Q&A.
Okay, awesome. Then there are until now 2 questions by Alex. One, will alerts update support alerting based on costs in a period? Yes, that's exactly the plan, where basically first we'll release webhooks, which will basically be like, for example, like always use this webhook when a trace with this name is created or when a user feedback score is created. Trigger this webhook. This will be like an initial release, and then the secondary will be kind of like sliding window metric over threshold and then notify. So for example, last 24-hour cost over 100 USD, then trigger the webhook. And once we are there, I mean, webhook target could also be then swapped to PagerDuty target, Slack target, email target. That's the idea around first building webhooks and then building alerts around this webhook infrastructure. If you have any follow-up questions on this, feel free to unmute yourself or add them to the chat. Otherwise, I would continue with the next question. When composing prompts, how is versioning handled? That is, if an included item changes, does it immediately affect all prompts that include it? Great question. We debated this for a long time with many teams that are interested in this feature. And for now, we decided that basically when you create a prompt and then like add a dependency to, for example, let's say we have prompt A and we have prompt B, and prompt A should use the production version of prompt B. That then if you basically promote a new version within prompt B as the production version, then this will immediately roll out to all prompts that depend on the production version of prompt B. The alternative to this implementation was to basically then prompt you to basically update kind of like a log file on all of the dependent prompts. But we quickly realized that the resulting UI UX is extremely complicated, and that you can work around this via labels, via protected deployment labels, and that this experience is way more predictable than triggering kind of like a confirmation flow of do you really want to promote, because then you have a prompt that uses Langfuse prompt B production, but as of yesterday and you didn't promote it, then the question is what happens if you then like change the production version of prompt B again? Like, will you ask again whether to promote or not? So currently, basically changing a dependency directly triggers an update in all of the dependents. What you can do if you want is you can pin a version and thereby like enforce that it doesn't change, and then you need to manually change it. So there's like some flexibility around this. Alex, if you have feedback and feel like this is not a sensible default, or you want more protection or alerts around this, please create an issue on like a thread on GitHub discussions to debate this. I think there could be like simple additions to this feature that make it work better for your use case in case this is a blocker. Then next, Bala asked, in terms of administration, how is the team thinking about multi-tenancy, where we might want to segregate or keep data from multiple tenants separate? Generally, Langfuse is designed to work well in a multi-tenancy scenario because, I mean, we ourselves as maintainers run Langfuse Cloud as a managed instance, which is highly multi-tenant with thousands, tens of thousands of teams running on the same instance. So generally, all of the segregation works on the project level, and the organization is just like a layer on top that helps to administer our projects, basically. If you self-host Langfuse, this is the same case. So all of the like data sources have this tenant key, and we ran penetration tests with external pen testers to make sure that the segregation also works. So generally, you can run a single instance or run multiple projects within the same Langfuse Cloud region. So this should fulfill all of the requirements. I've worked with many teams that have requirements around data segregation. But if you feel like this is not enough, you need logical separation, then you will need to run multiple clusters of Langfuse. Via the Helm chart or Terraform templates, this shouldn't be too big of an issue. And we have some like documentation on this, but generally I would recommend to run a single Langfuse instance in case you self-host, because Langfuse is a data-intensive service, and running multiple instances of it is just a lot of overhead for you and your team. So if possible, I would go for a single Langfuse deployment. Then additional question by Bala. For prompt management, where multiple tenants might have various flavors of a prompt, composability helps to an extent, but support for and or conjunctions for labels would be great. I assume here that you want to use different labels on versions, and then I think I don't understand what the idea here is. Can you either like unmute yourself, or otherwise let's take this to GitHub discussions?
No, I can quickly go over like if I'm able to supply like a couple of labels and constrain, like a prompt can have multiple labels, but when I retrieve it, I can supply a label and get it back. But if I can supply conditions saying matches this label and another label, or matches label 1 or label 2, I think that would also be helpful.
Yeah, I understand. I think this is. I think there's labels on prompt versions for this, for which might this be interesting, and there's tags on prompts, for which might this be interesting as well. I think we have an open discussions on like adding and or support for tags of prompts to then, for example, if you want to resurface the prompts within your own application, that you can get all of the prompts that have the, I don't know, public tag, but not the private tag, something around this. I think for tags, I see lots of use cases. For labels, I think this is like a new idea. Generally, there's no plan around this yet. And you could, for example, for and, you can just fetch one and then do another filter to check whether the other one is applied as well. For or, it's more difficult because you would need to fetch both and then join them. So I think right now it's quite an exotic requirement. But maybe I don't understand it fully. I would love to take this to GitHub discussions to go deeper on this.
I'll create a ticket there.
Awesome. Thanks so much. If you create a discussion, happy to join.
I'll post some
right after the call
as well about the use cases.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Bala.
Thank you.
Perfect. So we got through the questions that are in the Q&A. I'll just look again into the chat whether there's anything that might be interesting. Otherwise, feel free to add additional questions. If there's nothing, we can close the session early. But I mean, we still have 9 minutes in case you have any feedback or ideas that you would love to discuss. Otherwise, also feel free to just unmute yourself.
I have one question, but it's more related to pricing. I realize agent evals, at least part of the basic option, only has, you're only allowed to create one. Are we looking to expand more of that? I mean, it's hard to even just test that feature out with just one eval.
Yeah, thanks so much for the feedback on like, I think you're referring to the limits of the free tier of Langfuse Cloud. Great feedback. I mean, we iterate a lot on this because it's really difficult to get right. Our goal with the like free plan on cloud is basically to allow to test all features. I'll take this back to the team and we'll have a look whether basically the limits are not reasonable to then maybe increase the limits on the number of evals on the free plan.
Great, thank you.
This is great feedback. Oh, we have a new question by Alex. Alex, thanks for being so active. I wrote a little script to pull down all of my production prompts into a folder in my project so they get committed into the project's repository. Is there or will there be support for something similar to this in the product? Funny enough, we discussed this exactly today, like around how to persist prompts within a repository. I mean, there are a couple of different reasons why you might want to do this. One, if you want to use them as fallbacks, so you basically at build time have them available, use them as fallbacks. I mean, Langfuse supports like prefetching within the SDK, which then leads to prompts always being available at runtime, but maybe you just want to have them in the repository as well. So one, we discussed adding like a GitHub action or like a CLI template to just pull all the prompts and put them into a repository. Or secondary, if we add like at the point where we add the webhooks for prompt changes, you could also trigger basically some sort of logic to then on change basically update your repository. Could get noisy, but this could also be an option. So Alex, in case you wrote a little script already, if you're interested, it would be really cool if you can create a Git discussion thread on this and just post it as like a gist, for example, because maybe this is just like a great starting point to then release something that's more officially maintained by other people as well, where other people can contribute to your script and then use this as a reference. Because I think this is a niche but very useful use case of Langfuse prompt management. I mean, very similar to, for example, like using MCP for prompts. Not the main way of using prompts, but a cool one if that's kind of what you want. Awesome. I'll just wait for another minute, whether there are like any additional questions. And otherwise, this was fun again. Like, thanks again for like everyone contributing so many ideas on GitHub and like reporting many small bugs on the periphery of the platform, which really helps to make the product work well. And yeah, please continue to reach out to us, raise ideas, and yeah, contribute to the product. Yeah, who is it? Just unmute yourself. Love to chat. Okay, someone raised their hand. Probably this was a mistake. No worries. Okay, awesome. Then thanks again. I'm looking forward to see the releases of this quarter, and we'll upload the recording of the session later today or tomorrow to YouTube. Yeah, thanks so much. Have a good evening or good morning, wherever you are.